Welcome to the webinar CAD Collaboration in the Cloud, a discussion between Hardy Maybaum and Oleg Shilovitsky. We will begin shortly. For questions or technical issues, please use the Q&A field in the right-hand menu. Note that you might experience lag with audio or video depending on your download speed. Before we begin, a bit of a background on our speakers. Hardy Maybaum is the founder and CEO of GrabCAD.com, the largest community of mechanical engineers and designers in the world. He recently published the book, The Art of Product Design, Changing How Things Get Made. Hardy's background is in mechanical engineering and IT. Oleg Shilovitsky has been building and writing about data management, engineering, and manufacturing software for the last 20 years. He writes the popular industry blog BeyondPLM.com, where he shares his views and opinions on software for engineering and manufacturing. Today, Hardy and Oleg will be discussing the challenges of product development collaboration and how to solve them. They will also discuss the question they've been going back and forth on in the past year, to cloud or not to cloud. Today's webinar is not your typical webinar. I will tee up a question to start the conversation for Hardy and Oleg, and instead of speaking over slides or demos, we are going to just watch them actually have a conversation about the topics. Hardy and Oleg, you guys feel free to explore the topic as you see fit, and definitely feel free to question each other.
Hey Oleg, good to have you for this webinar. We've been talking on the blog about this topic, and it's great to do face-to-face discussion with you about very important topic about CAD collaboration and the future of design and manufacturing.
So Hardy, thank you for inviting me. It's cool to have live conversation, not only tweeting about this. So great to be here. I think CAD collaboration is still relevant because one of the fundamental questions that all engineers want to be answered is still unsolved. If you work in your environment, in your working environment, the question is, where is my last file? Where is the file I'm working on? Where is the design I'm working on? Where is my data? It's still unsolved. And that's why people have demanded to solve this problem. And especially these days, when you work with all consumer tools, the demand is even higher because people see how you can collaborate with all consumer tools, and the demand to have similar tools from CAD-oriented environment, for CAD-oriented environment.
Yeah, well, I see exactly the same things. Is I think there is a big fundamental shift. First, that the world is becoming much more distributed than it used to be. You know, it used to be that you had engineering and design and manufacturing all in one place, and today it's more distributed all the time. You have engineers and designers all over America, and then you manufacture in China, and you do some of the manufacturing in Detroit, Michigan, and all of these people need to work from the same file and the right file. I think that's been one of the fundamental change. What we see, the other thing what you also mentioned, which I think is very interesting, is that the expectations of that's coming from the tools like Dropbox and Box, how easy it is to use those tools. I think that's going to affect the CAD space as well. So in one way, the expectations of the usability of the tools have went up, but also the expectation of the functionality have went down, and I think this is a very interesting opportunity, and there's a clear need here.
You actually mentioned word file. Do you think still engineers are thinking about files?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think there is a lot of similarities about mechanical engineering and software engineering, and when you look at software engineering, it's all file based, and you can argue that software engineers are decades ahead of mechanical engineering. But they still work on a file, and I think file is when you look of the how you design and manufacture products, there is a lot of people who collaborate, and what they fundamentally collaborate around the files, and file is the primary thing that people move around because people will use different type of tools. So I do think that the files will be important. I just cannot see a tooling company in China using the same cloud editing tool that the engineer is using in San Francisco, for example.
Now, if you think about collaboration furthermore, don't you think the collaboration on the cloud, the collaboration over the internet, it's something that will destroy the notion of file? Again, you can think about design, you can think about data, but physically file all days, all the collaboration was about how to send file back and forth.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking that internet will destroy the notion of physical files, and then you can collaborate live.
I think the importance of file is going to be smaller, but in the end you need to take an NC code and put it to a machine, and there is a lot of steps before that where you need to have that file. So engineers need and always to take an output and take that file and move it downstream. So one of the challenges that we see our customers asking from us is some of the things you mentioned. They want to make sure that they're working from the latest and the right file, and that's where the common data model becomes such an important thing. The other challenge that we see from our customers is that they want to have the context, what they're talking about. And what I mean by that is that you need to connect all the different communications and data in the collaboration. You need to make sure that you're asking the question from your vendor about the right version of the file. And that's why you need to build that type of connection where communication and data always come together. And the third thing, what we've seen is that you collaborate in multi-language environments, and you don't, the best way to communicate the change is not necessarily always words. It's actually pictures and a more graphical way to collaborate. So those are the three things that our customers are asking from us, and what we are delivering to them. So this is what we see. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I think one big topic that today I see everywhere, it's called global, because everybody going global. Today you see smaller company, 10 people located in 3 different places, with manufacturing facilities in some other places. So I think the biggest challenge that today company facing in the collaboration space is how to face global. Because before it was the privileges of big companies. So if you're big, you can go global, then you have infrastructure, then you have IT to support you.
Mm-hmm.
Today, individual designer can work out of his house, design something, manufacture in different places, collaborate with somebody else. Now, the challenges of this global environment are probably on the same level like big companies faces in the past, but smaller people, smaller design firm and smaller company faces the similar level of challenges with small budgets and no tools. So the question is how to collaborate with a higher level of complexity and low budgets. That's the biggest challenge in my view.
Yeah, completely agree. I remember my days when I was in charge of IT and we were deciding to build a new manufacturing plant, and the biggest question became, does IT support that? And when you think about that's really ridiculous the way to think about that. So we see exactly the same way. Teams are distributed, and that's how people are nowadays used to work.
On the other side, it brings a different level of complexity. It's funny. In the past, I was looking at some collaboration tool demonstration. So people demonstrated how engineers from San Francisco and China collaborate together. And then somebody asked in the past, in the back, but by the way, when people in San Francisco are working, people in China usually sleep. So how they collaborate together?
Yeah.
Which brings actually the topic of asynchronous collaboration.
Yeah.
So how can people work in the context, and how they can actually they are not working together, they are working on the same thing and somehow collaborate. So this is a challenge, and I believe it's connected to what you call context, because somebody starts working and somebody need to continue this work and get straight to the point of the problem. I think that would be a great challenge.
Yeah, and that's another thing we've heard as well. I just visited a design firm, and they're very proud that they have engineers in almost every time zone, so they can work 24 hours. It's a big design firm, and when you talk with individual engineers in San Francisco, they are not happy to wake very early or wake up very late so they can have those Skype conversations with Chinese manufacturers, and they would rather communicate those things in a synchronous way. So that's definitely the challenges we've seen as well, and what we are addressing. So that's another great point.
You're actually bringing this Skype conversation with China, which I don't believe it's technically possible because of language concern. I think it's really challenging, and you mentioned that language communication is a problem. So how do you see this solving of language barrier for communication with people? So how it will work in the contextual form?
Yeah, so the way we are addressing that need, and the way we started to little bit of story of how, why we started to address that. I remember I was visiting a head of designer in a company in New York. They build kitchenware, and they manufacture everything in China. So the guy was telling me how he's awake every night till 2 a.m. just to make sure that these guys get it right. And if they don't get it right, they build the tooling from the wrong dimension or something like that. They send the prototype, they miss the deadline, and they cannot get the products to the kitchenware trade show, and that's how they're losing real money. So this is a real problem, and that the only way he could solve that is if he stays up 2 a.m. every night to communicate with people who really don't speak great English. So he was the guy who was pushing us to build a tool where you can basically do markup and replicate the feeling like someone is looking over your shoulder by not being at the same time zone. And that's a little bit what we've done with GrabCAD Workbench through our viewer. So core of GrabCAD Workbench is that everyone working on the same latest data, but also we translate that file to be viewable inside the browser, and then we have the different tools that we try to replicate the way like someone is looking over your shoulder, so that you don't need to be in the same time zone. So this is how we solve that problem, and it's already solving the problem. It's not ideal, but it's much better than staying up at 2 a.m. every day.
So in that case, how it's different from just placing files over the FTP or Dropbox?
It's much different. So when you look at the Dropbox, and that's where we're getting most customers are the ones who use Dropbox. Why it's different? You put files on Dropbox, then you send an email to someone saying, hey, can you do those changes? You describe those changes. Or what you do is you create a PowerPoint with a lot of pictures, and you put then you draw there and you say, can you make those changes? But at the same time, maybe you change your version in your Dropbox or FTP or a PDM tool, whatever, and now you're in a situation where you don't know which version you're talking about, and that's where the disconnect becomes.
So people are sharing files and collaborating. I remember these tools 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So what actually different now? So what changing? What different in these tools today rather than it was 10 years ago and it was a ton of money?
Yeah, so I think there is a big difference that have happened on the expectations. So the Dropbox and Facebook, in a way, those tools, or you cannot call Facebook a tool, but they were one of the things that Facebook have done is made the world much more open. And the second thing what have happened with Dropbox, it's really lowered the expectation for the functionality and increased the expectation of the usability. And when you look at those tools that were built 10 years ago, and trust me, I use those tools, they weren't built for collaboration. They were built around processes and very, very, very difficult to implement, very difficult to use. It's just easier to put the file on an FTP site and send an email about the changes. So I think the fundamental change that now have happened is it's much easier to build tools on a cloud that are easier to use and bring more value over the horizontal tools like Dropbox and FTPs and emails. So I think that's what have changed compared to 10 years ago.
I think nobody these days is not developing on-premise tools anymore. I think the point is that internet changed everything, And today it's just a question in what space, in what infrastructure space your application is running. So, and that's probably the time to bring question of public versus private versus hybrid clouds. And it's all about where the application is running, because infrastructure is pretty much the same for internet companies running the infrastructure on the public cloud, and for modern IT to run their applications in a company. So it's just a question where to put things privately, publicly, in the hybrid environment, or what so on. So, and everything runs in the browser. That's how I see on-prem tools. So I don't believe somebody in the really today is going to develop really on-premise tool that you install on your computer and it's not in the browser.
Yeah, we see it as well. It's really a question how big is your IT budget and how much you want to have control. And the customers we are selling mostly are small and medium-sized companies who don't have maybe big IT budget and don't want to invest in those infrastructure. But if you have already infrastructure in place, you should go with private cloud, and if you need to have these things under your control. So I agree on you on that side. It's not a question about on-prem, because when you're using a cloud product, one of the big advantages is that you can improve the product all the time. So when you're buying a PLM tool today, you will wait a year and a half for the bug fix or a new functionality that you ask, and then you wait another year and a half to get this new version of PLM or PDM software implemented in your company. It's not the case with a cloud product where we fix and we push push new functionality a couple of times a day. So that's really one of the big power of having a cloud product, that you can really fast iterate and improve the product daily basis.
However, here's the challenge here, because it's everything great to have cloud collaboration products. The problem is that 99.99% of CAD systems today running in production are Windows based.
Yeah.
So you have it installed in your company, and this is what engineers are working on everyday basis. So the challenge that I see is how to connect this production Windows based environment to the collaboration in the cloud. And this is where I believe the potential opportunity is how to connect these tools, because engineers, they work on the SolidWorks, Inventor, whatever else system in the company. So how they collaborate on the cloud with these desktop tools, that's probably the question about not on-prem but the challenges.
Yeah, and the way we see the world is that those desktop tools that the engineers have spent years of mastering and all the data is in there should be on desktop, because if you're an engineer, you want to have your big monitors, so usually you want to have your quiet time where you design the stuff, and you should use desktop for that. But the collaboration is much more on the go. Everywhere you are, you need to communicate, and the question what you ask is right: how to get the data, how to get that communication to the cloud. So I think that's a big opportunity.
So where do you see the challenge is? I believe these days to get data out of any CAD system and put it in the cloud is not an issue.
Yeah.
Because again, viewers and tools that can produce neutral formats, it's probably solved problem for most of the cases.
Yeah.
So where do you see the challenge in creation of this collaboration tool for many of companies? Because I see companies are struggling still.
So I think that the other challenging thing is when we come to the price. So you need to technically it's not a big challenge. You need to build a good user interface. You need to make sure that the system scales and solve some problems, and the problems are obvious. So I think technically it's not the challenge. What it's been a challenge in the past is being the go-to-market and the price points. So you cannot really sell these products the way you sell other products that cost a lot of money, and you cannot price this tool very highly because people are not ready to pay the same amount for those collaboration tools that they pay for CAD tools. So I think those have been challenges in the past, more than the technical challenges.
So why do you see pricing point is more challenging than technical problem? Because uh, I see the seamless collaboration is still a problem. If I'm using Inventor or SolidWorks and saving files on the disk, it's still a problem to get data up to the cloud and collaborate, because the changing cycle will be quite complicated. So how it all comes up to speed?
I think the key for that, how we think about, is the user experience. You need to make it, getting that data to the cloud, seamless. You really don't want to change your process, and that's where we put the focus. And once you get that one right, you have the data on the cloud. So you don't want to change the user behavior. You want to adopt your product to the user behavior, and the files are going to save to the cloud. So this is how we think, why it's important to, how when we design products, we always think, how can we not disrupt the user workflow? How can we get the data to the cloud in a seamless way? And I think that's the key, to get the data there.
I think the biggest complication in collaboration is to get right data in front of the people. So to put data in front of people that you're collaborating with, and for engineers working on the CAD models, it's how to get this data to the place where you can collaborate. So this is the biggest challenge, and this is the biggest argument of people that saying internet or web or whatever else will not solve the problem, because we are still limited by the wire, and the wire is slow. So if you want to take your files up to collaborative space, it can take time. So that's the biggest challenge, and I hardly can see how we solve all this problem, because I'm very much dependent on the connection speed.
Yeah, I thought that you were going to say search, but search, I think, is part of that story. We're agreeing a lot today, but I agree, this is a big challenge, is how to get the right data to the right person. Because if you are a manufacturing plant and you take a wrong version and create a tooling around on the wrong version, you can lose months, and for some companies, months it's over for them. So this is definitely the big thing to get right.
Honestly, I see the problem is technically to take files to the cloud, because it's complicated. In the United States, you probably can have a fast internet, your files will fly. However, if you will go in China facilities, or if you go around small working shops, they need to collaborate. They might not have a good connection. So this is where I believe the special tools can solve a problem, because if you understand the file structure, if you understand the specific of this data, you can really optimize it. And if you can optimize, you can go and you can provide ability to work on a very low speed of connection, creating great value. Now think about CAD file that you're changing something. You don't need to take all this file to the cloud. You need just take changes. So that can be a significant improvement and significant value for collaboration.
Yeah, completely agree that if you're an engineer, you press Ctrl Save quite a lot, and if your assembly is in Dropbox, that means that every time you hit Ctrl Save, it starts syncing files to the cloud, and you don't really want that. You want to share when you're ready to share the file yourself. So that's definitely where those vertical tools can come into play and offer a better user experience.
Actually, I don't like the idea that engineers need to do it at all. So what I like is the tool that do it, because it's like when I work, when I was working in Word or PowerPoint, I was hitting this Control S all the time, and I hated this. Then I moved to Google, and I was typing, and I was continuing to hit this Control S, and then I recognized that actually Google saves it for me. So basically, what I want is to take labor out, and I don't need engineers to hit this Control S when they want. I want it to be completely automated, so you do it for them. What about that?
I think it's a great feature. We need to build it.
Okay, now Hardy and Oleg are going to take some of the questions that have come in. We have about 5 minutes left. Any questions we don't get to today, Hardy and Oleg have agreed to try to answer by email or their personal Twitter.
Okay, so we have some questions, and let's see what people want to know. So the first question is your favorite: is collaboration on the cloud secure?
Okay, that's really favorite. That's the typically in all environments. The number one question is about security. Is it secure or not? The simple answer I have: it's not about security. It's about trust. So if you trust the vendor, you do it. If you don't trust, and that's with all cloud software, I think it's about the same. If you trust Amazon to put credit card on the website, you do it. If you don't trust, don't do it. So I believe there are companies that will trust cloud vendors today, and there are companies that will do it in 5 years.
So what you're saying is more about less about technical things and more about psychological things about people, how people think.
I think it's about both. I think it's about technical things that became mature.
Yeah.
So there are lots of technical things about how to do environment secure, but it's about how a company can make it visible. So you do care about security. If you do care about security, I trust you. So you do the best to make it secure, and I will use it. And if I don't trust, it will happen in 3 years, 5 years. Depends on the companies.
Yep, that makes sense. So let's see what else we have. You said cloud tools like Workbench are good for small agile companies. Does that mean when you grow to be a larger company, these solutions break down? So what do you think?
That's for you.
I think it's for me. I was hoping to get away with that. So I think it's about it's not about the size of a corporation. It's about how fast the company wants to move. So one of our customers is GE, and you could argue that this is such a large company, but what they care is about getting the products marketed faster, and they know that they need to change how they work together. So the tools can be used from both small companies to large companies. It's more about how fast you want to get your products to market. So let's see. It sounds like there are a lot of options for managing CAD files better. What is a first good step in finding the right solution? So obviously go read Oleg's blog post about that, but what comes after that?
Actually, thank you very much about blog. I had one post which says how to choose PDM system in 5 steps. And the first step was if you use CAD from a particular vendor, just pick up the PDM PDM from the same vendor. But
clearly this is outdated now. But
yeah, I believe it doesn't work for you for the moment. But but really, I think the point is that the question is, let me position the question differently. I think today engineers for the most of the companies that not using PDM already using Dropbox to share files.
Yeah.
And this is how they call it, gray IT or whatever an environment. So yeah. I think people need to collaborate, and they will try to use tools. So if you don't bring them PDM tool, they will use tools that they have at their disposal. So I think it's about how to bring some value to people that can use it for the price point and with the minimum disruption.
Yeah. I think this is a good way to think about that. So let's see what else we have. What if my IT department doesn't want to change the way we currently work, especially doesn't like the cloud? So I can give a quick story. So we were talking with a consumer electronics company, and we cannot name who they were, and we're talking about the head of industrial design, and he told that one of his main thing is to hire 10 industrial designers, and he's hiring those from Stanford and MIT and all these schools, and these young folks come in, and then they see that they need to use those legacy PLM tools, and they're like, wait, I cannot use Dropbox, I'm out of here. So they quit. So now the head of industrial designer is in trouble because his boss says go hire those people, but he cannot retain those people. And I think that's fundamentally wrong with current IT. IT job is not to protect people, but not to enable people to do their work better. So if your IT department says that you cannot use the cloud tools, I think you have a wrong IT personnel in your company.
I would agree. I think there are lots of stories how people can override IT with establishing of different type of collaborative environment in parallel what they do. So I think IT really need to consider different behaviors today, and not to put strict rules, but improve collaborative environment.
Yeah. So let's see. My manager think we shouldn't invest in a collaboration tool because we don't have an IT guy or a CAD administrator. Do you agree this is necessary? That's for you.
Who is this IT guys? Because from my experience, the IT guys is one of the engineers that know better about computers. So in every company that doing some engineering work. So I think definitely it's not about if they have an IT person. It's a question about how much work they need to do in order to make it manageable with the combination of price points. So if you solve these two issues, you can go and make it convenient for every company.
So I think we are running out of time, so we are not able to take more questions right now. But it's been a great session. We will get back to the questions that we couldn't answer over email. Oleg, thanks for coming in, and let's continue our conversation over Twitter and blog posts.
Okay, thank you for hosting me here. Great place. See you later.
Thanks.